Carl and Liam here from Games, Brains and Head-Banging Life at gbhblofficial for sure. And it's We're Afraid of the Dark. You know how this goes by now. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Talk through and review. We're up to episode 6, the halfway point of season 3. The Tale of the Bookish Babysitter. If you're thinking, God damn, that is a terrible title, you are correct. That is a terrible title. And weirdly, it is a complex mess of writers, as we have a story by Cliff Bryant and Alice Elliott. So two people wrote a story here. Then we had it adapted, a teleplay by David Preston. So was everybody struggling to get this one together? Which you can certainly tell by the nonsensical way it plays out. And it was directed by Ian Patterson. So not much to say about this fact-wise. The book Belinda first opens is called A Dragon by Candy Close. And the book Betty Ann has at the end is The Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Heavy stuff there, Betty Ann. All right. The movie Ricky is watching. Did you know what movie it was? Because obviously it was one in the public domain.
No, I didn't. Wasn't quite sure on that one.
Same. It wasn't one of our usual ones. It isn't one, the usual Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that. But it is White Zombie, 1932's White Zombie, which I've never actually seen, so I couldn't for sure know what it was.
Well, I've heard of it though. Yeah.
3 people are mentioned in the cast: Natalie Redford as Belinda. James Sherry as Ricky Winter and Lynn Adams as Mrs. Winter. It's a very small cast, at least in regards to sort of like people who are credited, because a lot of people are uncredited in this, And it's a Betty Ann's story. It's a Betty Ann's turn to tell us one. So at the campfire, we begin with Frank being sexist to Sam. She arrives with an armful of logs and he claims that they're too heavy for her and tries to help. She refuses to help and he angrily shouts that she needs to stop being such a guy all the time. And I was like, holy shit, this start is well back. I know it's still done in kiddie form, but it's the fact he gets angry with her. It's like, you need to stop being a guy all the time. Frank, that's well troublesome.
Hey man, it was the 90s. Casual misogyny was all the rage.
Yeah, all girls need looking after in it. And Sam ends up laughing and agreeing, so she drops the logs on his feet, hurting Frank, which has Kiki and Betty Ann laughing at him. You know what I thought about this, right? It's good that he gets humiliated, right? But if you watch, the directing for the act was clearly look angry, Frank. Look angry. That's what he was told. No. Tell him to look embarrassed. Instead, what it looked like is Frank was quietly seething, and all I was thinking is, ooh, that's going to come back in a bad way. Instead, have him look ashamed and embarrassed, and maybe have him apologize and say, "Oh, I'm sorry." Do you know what I mean? And then that's how you tell that little part. He was being a dick, but instead, the director was clearly, "Be angry, Frank." And it's like, no, wrong message, wrong message. I know I'm reading too much into it, but it bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. But it's kind of like within his character, I suppose. He's a little bit like that.
He's a hothead. Yeah, he's a hothead, true. Gary and Tucker now arrive, and a former notices Betty Ann as a book. It's part of her story, which is about stories and how they can set the imagination aflame. If you're really into a story, you become part of it. It's a person's imagination that gets them into a story. And if you're not careful, you might also need your imagination to get out of it. Now, what annoyed me about this is everyone at campfire is like, ooh, what the fuck have you been doing for 2.5 seasons if not getting invested in a story? Why is what she's saying so impactful to people who literally sit around and tell a fucking story? But all like,
Good
oh my
point.
God, I never knew that.
I always like to imagine that there are like stories that it's like a weird fourth wall breaking thing in a way. Like they tell stories like off screen that you don't see that are like not that good because they can't all be bangers, and even the ones that they do tell are not all bangers. So maybe there are ones that are not so good that are like have been a bit disappointing or whatever that we just don't see. So it kind of like breaks the fourth wall in the sense that the good ones are the ones that get shot on film in a way.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society. This is the tale of the Bookish Babysitter. Right. The moment this started, I got massive flashbacks and one of those rare events, and it was Belinda. It was when Belinda appeared on screen, and I was like, either I know you from something else, which I don't, or you are what I remember from this.
Yeah, I do think that immediately the episode does give off quite a nice, intriguing vibe, and I think that's helped along greatly by the actress who plays Belinda, because I do think she is memorable, not just in her appearance, but she gives off, that typical sort of adult actor that you get in these types of shows, the eccentric performance. Yeah.
Well, she's got a cheekiness which I quite find adorable, and I had this feeling, and I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think I remembered her because I think I might have had a crush on her when I was younger. Right?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if it's because even now with her cheeky behavior, I'm a bit like, oh, she's quite attractive. Like cheeky, kind of silly, kind of like laughing at like she's confident as well.
Have you ever seen the movie The Witches by Roald Dahl? Like the
Well,
movie?
the original, yeah, like
Yeah,
Angela, not, yeah,
Angela Houston in it, yeah, yeah, with the witch, yeah, that movie. Well, there's a character in there that's like a good witch type character. And she always kind of reminded me of like a similar, like it's kind of like very, very similar. Plays it quite similarly, like that sort of like good witch type thing, where they've still got like that witchy vibe to them, but they're obviously like more veering towards the good side kind of thing. Kind of reminded me of that quite a bit.
interesting. It's a good comparison because I do remember what you're talking about there. But
Hmm.
yeah, so Belinda, she's a young woman who is apparently a very popular babysitter. She seems to know just what her parents need, which she puts down to having an imagination. Her latest charge is Ricky Winter, who likes to watch TV. He'd rather not have a babysitter being 12, because of course, he's 12 and doesn't need to be looked after. Belinda is confident in her abilities and tells his mother that they have books to read. And immediately from our perspective, it's like, well, these are clearly magical books. I mean, it's called The Bookish Babysitter, which is still just a terrible title. Why not call it The Magic Babysitter if you're going to give it such a shit name, right?
Yeah, just bookish. Just doesn't, it just doesn't sound good.
With the mother gone, Belinda starts with Ricky and insists on turning off the television. She's annoying him already and he's rude, but she isn't taking any of his shit. They agree that if he reads a book for 5 minutes, she will leave him alone for the rest of the night. It's a deal, and Ricky begins to read a scary book about an evil witch who comes knocking at the door late during a stormy night. While he's reading, he fails to notice an actual storm is picking up. We certainly hear it, but it's the knock on the door that startles him and he refuses to read anymore as it's boring. So he's kind of like, it's more like his imagination is hearing it rather than being a thing that we're actually hearing in real life, I think.
Mm. Yeah.
Belinda asks the user's imagination to try another, so he starts to read The King's Sword. Belinda is very pleased, but as he reads, the events he reads out loud begin to happen. The sound of a battle, a shadowy hand reaching out, followed by a creepy hand coming around the corner. Before it can get to him, though, he gets bored again and closes the book. I don't blame him, though. These stories are terrible. Oh, an evil
Mm.
witch, a freaking battle in a like these aren't interesting books.
Yeah, they're very like typical like sort of fairy tale type stories. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly that. But you'd argue above a 12-year-old's goddamn like reading comprehension and ability.
definitely.
Belinda warns him that once you begin reading a book, you really should finish it. He goes to read another, picking up a big red tome, but Belinda won't allow it because she feels he's not ready for that one yet. Ricky is now fed up and decides to go to his room, even though she warns him not to go out there. Of course, he ignores her and she looks inside the red book, clearly planning something. So, admittedly, while I did remember the character, I didn't remember the show or the episode, so I couldn't quite remember if her intentions were evil. It kind of felt like unlikely, but then I was like, well, it could be a bit of subversion that she's an evil witch.
Yeah,
Ricky is relaxing on his bed playing a handheld video game. He hears Belinda coming into his room and tells her to go away and to leave him alone. She doesn't, and angry, he looks up to see not Belinda, but a medieval knight in armor. The knight chops at Ricky, who manages to move in time. There's a good pillow slicing scene here. Don't mind that.
mm, yeah,
He runs out of the room, screaming for Belinda, but ends up running into a wailing ghost. He runs to the living room and finds Belinda burning her books in the fireplace, and he tells her what he saw. And she says she knows all about it, claiming that they will go away if he helps her burn the books. Yeah, of course, right? If it's in the books, burn them. I get that. But the
yeah. I
door
thought
starts.
also,
Go on, sorry.
sorry, I'm going to jump in quickly to say I thought the effect of the ghost coming slowly down the corridor was a nice looking creepy effect.
Yeah.
It was good.
This section has a nice bit of energy that kind of keeps it flowing together, and it's kind of going a predictable path. We knew the books were either going to come to life or something was going to come out of the books. It would all work quite nicely, and it's one thing to another. And the actor, the kid playing Ricky, James Sherry, he does a decent job here of believably reacting more about not necessarily terrified, but scared and very confused.
Yeah, not quite like still kind of unconvinced. He does that quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. So the door starts to bang, though, with someone claiming to be Belinda on the other side, telling Ricky to let her in and not to listen to the Belinda inside. And why is that? Because it turns out the Belinda inside is an ugly old witch with a really badly ADR'd voice. They didn't even try here. to have the person in the studio's voice match the character and stuff like that. And I get why you would do that because the voice is particularly cackly and high pitched and would have been quite difficult to do in the moment. But they've done a terrible job of matching it up, so it just looks like shit. It made me laugh the first time she kind of laughed and cackled.
I still thought it was quite an effective like jump scare, her turning
Yeah.
into the witchy hag, because it kind of comes out of nowhere. Like up to this point, hasn't been anything other than the ghost coming on the corridor. Hasn't been any like actual scary moments. And I thought the makeup used was at least good. You know.
I actually think it's a decent scare too. I think how the makeup and probably I'm going to sound mean here, but whoever's behind the makeup isn't that attractive either. So it's kind of played doubly. Like I think it works. I think it was a good. I think of a certain age you might be frightened by that witch, particularly the scare because the camera pans across, quick cut, and it's like like that kind of thing. I think that's going to scare a kid of a certain age.
For sure.
But of course, the real Belinda burst in declaring that she was afraid this was going to happen. Okay, stop right the fuck here. This is where I got annoyed because none of this had to happen, right? Like, she knew what she was doing, she knew what the consequences were, but she let them all play out, but with a certain level of glee, which is where I was confused about her motivations. Now, none of this will be cleared up by the end. This is all just an unfortunate accident. She's apparently let fucking happen and then been surprised or disappointed or annoyed that it is occurring as it is. How the fuck did she get separated? But also, like, if the bad witch could just burn the books anyway, then what was she doesn't need the kid. She was doing it before he turned up. Now, none of this kind of makes sense. And I was kind of hoping it would all kind of come together and be like, this was Belinda's plan all along. But it's not really. It's all accidental. But she knew these were the consequences of him not finishing the story. So why didn't
Yeah.
she force that issue?
It's true. It does raise a lot of questions of like, is this what she always does? Is this always what happens? And if this is what always happens every time she does these babysitting, situations, is he actually in any real danger here of like actual harm or like death? Because if that's the case, then are you telling? And how many baby? It makes you think about how many times has she done this kind of thing. It just raises so many questions. And like,
It
has
does.
it always gone well, or has it gone poorly? Like, have kids died? Have kids got their arms chopped off? Have parents come back and been like, "Where's my kid? He's like been like beheaded or something." I don't know. It raises a lot of questions.
The best I got at the end, I decided I'm going to jump right to the end here. At the end, I decided the way this played out was none of it actually happened, and that it was all him reading a book in it was his imagination, and we were seeing that play out. Because otherwise, how is she explaining the chop pillow? The damage in the kitchen of when they pushed the table and then it shoved across the room. There's all these things that would have happened and occurred that, like, no, you got to basically give me more than that. So I decided at the end, and I'm doing it now, that none of this actually happened.
That is certainly one way to interpret it. Another way could be that she drugs the children. I mean, there's that possibly too, and they are imagining it. Yes.
So anyway, she grabs Ricky and drags him into the kitchen where they put a cabinet against the door. Belinda seems awfully jovial about events as she tells Ricky that the stories are out of control now and he'll have to fix it. He has to finish them, except they've been burned, so he'll have to use his imagination to create the stories and the endings. Of course, we've seen this before, from the magic typewriters to whatever. His first attempt is very lackluster and it doesn't work. Because, of course, he's just like, oh, and they all lived happily ever after, the ending. She says, no, that's not good enough. And I actually have another issue with that. Why is that not good enough? Just because
Hmm.
stories can end in shit fashion. We see it in films, we see it in episodes, we see it in a show. Not every story has a great ending, so you can get away with just saying something like, yep, and then they all lived happily ever after. She seems to have decided there are rules or created rules to this.
Yep.
So she claims he's got two stories mixed up and now he must sort them out. What do you mean he got two stories? You let him read two separate books.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just one of those situations where they're just trying to cram in way too much without explaining anything into such a short runtime. I think this is one of those episodes that really highlights the short runtime of these episodes.
Hear that? Before they can go any further, though, the witch bursts in and they run down to the basement. Just want to mention the witch's movements had me. The movie Demons, the 1985 movie Demons, has a couple of demons that sort of run around like that. That's what the witch is doing, and I decided as well to make this more fun that actually that was a demon, and that made it way more scary for me because she was running like one.
Yeah.
Down in the basement, Belinda still looks to be having a great time. Ricky's new story idea, an Uzi in the basement. I had no problem with this. This is a twist. This is an M. Night Shyamalan twist. There's an Uzi in the basement, and Ricky just shoots the fuck out of everyone. But apparently that's not good enough. And I'm like, you know what, man? She is setting way too many arbitrary rules on this.
I know, it's true, yeah.
But now Ricky notices the red tome that Belinda is carrying and that she keeps sneaking glances at it. He suspects she knows what happened and the ending's in it. He demands the book, which she teases him with, but hands over where he discovers the pages are blank. He is now transported into a medieval dungeon and discovers that his story, the words he says out loud, are being written within the pages of the book. Yawn. The sound of clanking metal gets his attention though, and a medieval knight arrives sword in hand. Ricky has to dodge to survive, and if this medieval knight is actually the king's protector as he's supposed to be, he can't even kill a kid. He is terrible.
Yeah, and even though a lot of the effects here and like the sets and stuff, they do look like sets, I still applaud, the effort that went into craft these sets and stuff. It's worthy of some praise, you know. And also, yeah, they make and they're about to make note of the fact that he is the first knight to penetrate this tomb in centuries. And that just really annoyed me because I just call complete BS on that because it was so easy. How is he the first in centuries? Like nonsense.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say each book that Belinda brings to her charges are brand new stories, right? That's got to do the way that makes sense.
There you go. That answers that question.
But yeah, I second your set thing. This looks like a decent dungeon, and I like the fact that they use really kind of moonlight glow from like certain windows in it as well to give it a vibe. I'm cool with it. But while Ricky is easily dodging this knight, he gets a chance to read the book, discovering that the knight is there to protect the tomb, waiting for a sign. What's the sign? Well, as the knight goes to strike, it appears above the hilt and matches the same longsword portrait that is on his t-shirt. Recognize that Ricky shows the shirt to the knight, who stops, pledges allegiance to Ricky, and bows down and offers him his sword. What a coincidence. That's why I'm convinced none of this is real. Because that's just a stupidly... Now, that's a weird coincidence, right?
Yeah.
After taking the sword, the knight falls apart, and Ricky now reads that whoever wields the sword has to defend it to the death. At least there's a comedy moment here, as Ricky's kind of like, nope, don't want none of that. Suddenly, a voice calls out. The person is a little girl carrying a big little candle. She tells him that she is lost and she cannot find her way home and wants his help. And God almighty, did my eyes roll here. Really? Really?
Mm.
Ricky just kind of ignores it all, but continues to read and realizes that the girl is the witch. The little girl now transforms into the witch, who just sort of stands there and laughs. That's all she does. I realize that's all she actually does in the entire episode is kind of just laugh.
Yeah.
But falling backwards, Ricky grabs the sword, swings it, and cuts her chest open. Okay, hear me out, folks. That sounds graphic, and it was a surprising moment where technically it is to a certain degree, where he does actually slice her open, except this is up there as one of the worst effects that not only have Are You Afraid of the Dark done, but Goosebumps done as well, where it is clearly superimposed green slime that then spreads over the witch, becomes a whole green slime thing, and then disappears. The effect is so bad. It is the equivalent of going to Google Images, taking a PNG of green slime line and moving it over the frame. That's how bad it is. I don't get it. Why make it so bad? I get the green slime thing. You wanted to have a little bit of gore, but there's no red anything in this. But like, why? Surely it could have been done better. Like, you can do better than this, right?
Surely. I mean, surely just buying some cheap green slime or something like a real practical slime rather than that. I mean, probably it costs more to do the computer effect.
Yeah. Shockingly bad, folks. So with this done, a wall in the dungeon opens and Ricky reads the book in the book that it says in his heart he knew the answer. So hold up a second here. To open this secret door to where the king's tomb is, you need to have killed the witch anyway. Like, how does that work?
Mm.
But what does Ricky know? He talks back through what he has seen. The night he was defending the dungeon against a witch, and he was the ghost. The knight's ghost now flies in and transforms into the king. Ricky realizes the story was about a king who was placed under a spell cast by an evil witch. His spirit was cursed to wander the earth forever. The king's spirit animated a suit of armor into a knight to remain in the defended tomb until a brave hero would show up to help defeat the witch and save the king. Ricky now bows before the king and offers the sword. The story makes no sense, folks. Why would you want the tomb to be defended? She's already cast a spell. What more could she do to you after this fact? Surely you would animate the suit of armor to go and kill the witch. Like that's its job.
Yeah.
Anyway, after that, Ricky is now sent back home where Belinda is waiting and says she's just finished reading the story. Mrs. Winters returns home and is like, "Oh, you've got my son reading a book. What miracle is this? Oh, where's Ricky and what have you done with him? Oh." It's that kind of awful acting. She's barely in it, so I ain't going to give her too much harshness, but the acting here, I hate it. The book in his hand, it's the Dark Tomb, which has his name on it, which is where that's what I said. I was doing a whole, oh, you know what? None of this was real. But clearly it did because his book was written with him as an author. Because again, his mum was like, oh, this book has your name in it. It must be an author of the same name. What a weird coincidence. I know I'm mocking her, but that's literally how she speaks. She might as well have been reading off the cue card in her hand. Ricky asks Belinda, did it really happen? Well, she just smiles and says it's only a story. Belinda now leaves, refusing payment, sort of saying she already got paid and offering to look after Ricky again. And Mrs. Winters, rather than being like, wait, what? What? What has she done? What has she nicked? What has she stolen from my home that means she's already been paid? I like, this is all weird. She just goes, oh, great, I got a babysitter for free. No, I'd be like, bitch, what did you take? Ricky, what happened? Do you know what I mean? Come on.
Definitely. Very suspicious.
Straight to the bedroom, straight to your Julie fucking counter. Do you know what I mean? Checking everything. Back at the campsite, Betty Ann says that Ricky searched all over the library, but he never found another copy of The Dark Tomb by Ricky Winter or any of Belinda's other books because they were her first and only edition before ending her story. Everyone is impressed because aren't they always? And Tucker wants to see the book that she's been holding. She teases him about being too young, but he grabs it and discovers that it's a joke at his expense. Basically, she's written a kind of short story about Tucker, knowing that Tucker would be a dick, and in it, it's kind of teasing him and stuff like that. Ha 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 ha! And everybody laughs, and Tucker's embarrassed, and so on. Listen, I hate this one. I really did. I thought this was. I hate the fantasy ones. I hate the fantasy ones. They're just so shit. This is rushed. It's messy. It's all over the place. The one saving grace is Natalie Redford as Belinda, who's entertaining and likable, but the rest of it is just nonsensical, and I just want it to be over. This is the worst kind of episodes for me, where there's no horror, no excitement, no interest, and I'm just constantly. And what I'm doing is I'm pulling it apart for no reason. When it's an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, it shouldn't need this much pulling apart.
No, I mean hate is quite strong, but I can understand why. I myself am starting to get really frustrated with these episodes now, and with the ending, like I can almost guarantee Ricky will probably just end up thinking that was a crazy dream. I mean, I don't think it will have any long-term impact on him anyway. Or he'll think when he's older, he'll probably think that probably she did drug him. I think that's what's most likely, and he'll go back to his old ways anyway. So like, the sentiment of what they're trying to say, I guess it's there, about like books over, TV bad, books good. That's the message, I suppose. I do think it is somewhat memorable, like you said, for Belinda. She is her striking appearance does stay with you, and but it's mostly due to the massive potential with what is a great concept, just like it always is when we have spoken in the past about magical typewriters and stuff like that. They're such great concepts for creativity and possibilities. But unfortunately, like those episodes, it ends up feeling underwhelming due to the potential being so great, but the outcome being so lackluster. And that just goes down to the fact that we've got a short 22-minute episode and you've got a small budget. They can't even do green slime without using computer effects. I mean, that says it all, really. Why even do
Yeah.
it? If you can't even do that, I mean, come on, you should just not do the concept at all. There is actually a movie on Netflix, maybe it's still on there or not, but it's called Night Books. It's the exact same concept as this, the exact same. And it is 10 times better. It has a budget, and it does do a lot of better things than this, basically. So go watch that instead.
The idea of books coming to life or imagination going wild, it's nothing fresh and nothing new. But aren't you as well just kind of tired? And I know this is a 90s show and stuff like that, but aren't you just tired of anything preaching, giving you that preachy message of books bad, TV bad, books good, go outside and play all that nonsense? When for example, what I don't get as well, if Ricky, what you should have shown it to was Ricky was watching something sort of really, have him watching Stag, have him sitting there, dull-eyed, almost drooling to a degree, staring at static to the point where he's become brain dead by it. Almost at that point, he's watching White Zombie, which is a 1932 horror movie. That's quite an engaging thing, though. Like, and a lot very unimaginative, and something like I don't see the correlation between the two, particularly when his was is instead of that, here's a really boring book about a night. Do you know what I mean? Like, come on.
Too
I don't
simplistic.
like that message.
Yeah, it's far too simplistic, and the message, yeah, I don't like the message either because, like, you know, that's just, yeah, you could go into that, but also, like I said, I don't think there's really like a sense of danger with what the things that are happening because
Right.
there can't actually be anything harm that comes to him, so that kind of takes me out of it as well. Yeah, it's just, yeah, disappointing.
There it is. There it is. That was episode 6 to 10 of the Bookish Babysitter. You got any thoughts on this when you know what to do? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news, and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at GBHBL. Just search for GBHBL and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.